BevNet and Nosh virtually live event. My name is John Craven, and I'm the founder and CEO of BevNet and Nosh. We're really happy to have you join us over the next 2 days. And, we couldn't possibly have imagined at the start of this year that this was how we were all going to come together. But here we are, now over 100 days since the start of the pandemic. As many of you know, we started our live events as a way to bring together the entrepreneurs and brands who are part of our online community and the greater food and beverage industry. We obviously can't all be together in person right now, which is why we're doing it virtually. The experience will hopefully feel familiar in terms of the quality of content, the topics, and the speaker roster that has been assembled. But it will also be different in that networking and interaction will happen via digital means rather than at our sample bar, a lunch break, or an after party. We encourage you to explore the platform, check out our supplier and brand expos, and to take part in the Force Brands Home Bar Happy Hour. And one thing that doesn't change, however, is our need to thank the kind sponsors who helped us do that. So thanks to Source Technology, Cargill, Zipline Logistics, Deerline Probiotics and Enzymes, JPG Resources, Zuckerman Honickman, BevSource, Sweegen, Grow Agency, Whipstitch Capital, Niagara Bottling, and Applied Food Services. And thanks to our team too, who have worked so hard to create this experience for all of us. And beyond the sponsors and our staff, of course, I have to thank you, the incredible entrepreneurial community who are taking time out from your already disrupted lives and businesses to join us and each other in an effort to make the industry better, stronger, fairer, and more enjoyable for all. Feel free to hit me or any of our staff up via the messenger and the event platform. And don't forget to join us for that happy hour tonight at 5 p.m. Anyway, we're going to get things started, and I want to turn it over briefly to our CMO, Mike Schneider, who's quickly going to talk about the platform that we're all now enjoying and to take you through some of the ways you'll be able to network and meet each other. Mike?
Thanks, John. Hey, everybody. I'm coming to you live here from the Happy Hour Bar at BevNet headquarters. And as you know, our conferences are informational as well as a resource to help you make meaningful new connections, firm up growing friendships, and make plans for long-term business relationships. Here's how you do it in the Engages platform, which is where you are right now. Okay, first, if you haven't done so, fill out all the aspects of your profile, because much of the serendipity we enjoy in real life is going to happen through exploration in the networking lounge and in the search tool. Super powerful. So make sure you have your name and title and a picture of your face as your avatar so that you're easily recognized. Providing a good balance of personal and professional interests will help spark conversations. During the sessions, you can interact by asking questions. We'll have moderated Q&A, which is under that Q&A tab in the session. You should see it right now. We'll do our best to leave time and get to as many as we can. And feel free to ask questions throughout the session. You don't have to wait. It's all going to be moderated. And we'll answer as many as we can and follow up after the session with you if we don't have time to answer all the questions. You can connect with people for virtual coffee or cocktails several ways. There's a networking lounge up in the menu where you can interact with everyone on the social wall. You can scan the who's online under your avatar, which is your profile picture, to search for someone you'd like to meet. Or you can use a super powerful search tool to search for people, partners, products, based on capabilities, types, based on capabilities, types, like you can search for sparkling water, or you can search for CBD, or certain interests. Try it out. I'll be searching for kombucha, coffee, or nut butter brands for starters. You can search for co-packers, CBD investors, and more. One thing I want to share, how proud we are as a team of our ability to help you find someone during the event who can help you. Whether it's answering questions, making connections or introductions, or handling any problems or issues that arise, we're not going to be stopping that just because we're online. Here's how you reach us. You can go to the help desk, or you can go to the search tool and just search for BevNet, and all the people from BevNet will show up. Just one thing though, we're only slightly more experienced at this tool than you are, so bear with us. And please, in the help desk, let us know how we can do better next time. So let's get to the education sessions to talk about how we're doing that. Here's Editor-in-Chief Jeff Kleinman.
Hi, all. Like Mike and John, I'm incredibly happy that you're choosing to join us, and that we have a way to do it from a healthy distance. There are actually 1,000 people who've chosen to join in, or at least 40 if you don't count our K-pop subscribers. The speakers, panelists, and sponsors have been working with our teams to create what we think will be incredible, timely content, and I'm just so thankful to all of them. Now, the core strength of our conferences in the past has been their interactivity, their ability to allow communication between audience and speaker, both on and off the stage. And I'm hoping that our platform in some ways enhances that, although I know that the distance from each other may make it seem a little weird at first. Now, we've all been through so much disruption, upheaval, and uncertainty in the past 3 or 4 months. And so it just makes us grateful to be able to do something that feels remotely normal, even if we're doing it from a pretty odd place. The idea of getting back to work means different things for different people. And for us, it's the chance to continue to fulfill our mission as a reporting and learning platform. So I hope you're all as excited as we are to get started. I want to make a quick note. The first transition that we do from the main stage to the breakouts is going to happen really quickly. So at 11:50, please make sure you're ready to go and click in to your breakouts, because there's not going to be really a break there. Now, I know we've all got the privilege of starting off from the comfort of our own homes. And knowing that I could do that has been a true realization for how fortunate I am and how many of us are, just to be able to adjust simply by decentralizing our workspaces. But I don't think any of us can forget just how tightly intertwined we are with the essential workers in trucking, manufacturing, distribution, grocery, and more. And it's one of the core facts of this business that decisions made at the CEO level are tied to the front lines. And on those front lines, it's so much less comfortable. So in that spirit, for our first session today, we're going to lean into discomfort a little bit. Our first panel deals with the experience of Black entrepreneurs and workers within the food and beverage business. Now, I want to be clear. Our first panelists shouldn't have to be here. They should not have to do this. And the fact that they've chosen to join us means that they're kind and generous, and we need to listen. We need to get it, and we need to act. And anyone who would question why we would delve into this, I think, has twice as much reason to pay attention. But here it is. We're in a long overdue time of upheaval with regard to the identification and elimination of systemic racism, whether racist by specific intent or through the ingrained culture. And I'm a product of that racism. I owe at least some portion of my success and comfort in life to systemic racism. It's my job, it's all of our jobs, to try to mitigate the effects of that systemic racism and to fix or rebuild systems that allow it to thrive. So we're going to explore that within the food and beverage business. Now, this is an uncomfortable subject for many of us. But as I said before, we're living at a time when some personal, emotional, or social discomfort is a small price to pay compared to the heavy toll structural racism has extracted from Black people in America. This is a time when the industry needs to identify this structure and evolve on from it. As a community, we're here as supporters of the entrepreneurs, we're supporters of the disruptors, We're supporters of the innovators. We know there are better ways to do things. That's what powers this community. And this panel, through storytelling and discussion, is going to attempt to identify where there are needs for solutions and what forms they might take. So I'm honored to have with us Jamari Pinkard, the co-founder and CEO of Hella Cocktail Company, Denise Woodward, the founder and CEO of Partake Foods, Ezra Gibson, the vice president of brand marketing at Good to Grow, and Austin Stevenson, the chief innovation company of infusion company Vertosa. I'm so grateful to them that they're going to join us and have this discussion. And we talked about the first question, and it's not a fun one. So we're going to start from the position that, yeah, this is a business that is infused and suffused with systemic racism. So over the course of your careers, where have you struggled with that? And I throw it to Austin to start. And you're muted.
Oops, there you go. Only the 101st time I've done this.
You've struggled with muting.
Exactly. Well, actually being silent or having to be silent. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Austin Stevenson. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Vertosa. And although I'm relatively new to the food and beverage industry, starting just a few years ago at Eurofin Scientific, building and managing a team of PhD analytical chemists testing food and beverage hemp products for companies like CVS and other retailers. Throughout my entire professional career, you know, the experience for me is really uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable. And I'll tell you why. The reason it's uncomfortable is because majority of the time, I'm the token black guy. I'm the only one in the room. No one else looks like me. But over time and time and time, and over the course of my professional career, I really had to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so it actually became kind of my superpower, if you will, because the tool that I learned and utilized time and time again is known as code switching. I mean, it's essentially the art of being a chameleon, to blend in or fit into your environment. Why? Well, it's really because of self-preservation. To me, and what I've seen in many industries, and especially the food and beverage industry, is that the path to leadership is really arduous for minorities. Black people cannot afford to let stereotypes or stigmas get in the way of career progress. It's the actualization of Martin Luther King's desire to be judged by the content of your character and not the color of your skin. So what did that look like for me? Well, first I had to develop the skills and I had to speak the language. You know, that's what all my degrees and all the student debt that I'm still paying, you know, provided the skills and the language. And then second, instead of wearing the Nike hoodie that I so desperately desire to wear to work every day, I literally created a uniform so that the all-white, middle-aged, conservative men who majoritively, you know, sit in these boardrooms, who are in leadership, would view me as safe, and only be able to judge me by the content or the value of the ideas I was pitching them. So, you know, for me, it's like, then you ask the question, well, what did that uniform look like? Well, I mean, I'm sure many of you guys, if we were live today in New York, you'd be wearing it. It'd be gray slacks, black shoes, black belt, white or blue shirt, and a navy blue blazer. I mean, that is the uniform that allowed me to fit in, because I had the skills. I spoke the language. I looked the part. Now, all that they had to deal with, or I have to deal with, is two things that I can't help. being young and being Black. But that's okay, because again, I got comfortable being uncomfortable. I know what that feels like. And through those experiences, I gained resilience, I gained confidence, and the value that I could bring to the table. So yeah, I mean, my experience here has and requires sometimes 2-3 times the effort. It took a ton of student loan debt. It took, a strategic uniform to get to the table, but I got there. And when I showed up, I was ready with value to give. But, I remind myself that I know, look to my peers that look like me, not everyone has that patience. Not everyone has that desire. Not everyone has that confidence. In fact, for some, code switching can be exhausting and negatively impact productivity. It causes some people actually to bout or to quit. And, I challenge, or I ask the group, do you ever wonder why that awesome, Black guy or woman in marketing left, right? Left the company? I mean, although he hit all his numbers, he always had a smile on his face. He was always a light for the company picnic. But maybe because he was tired of not fitting in, or maybe because he was the only one. Because it's this notion of why did he leave? It's, to me, because diversity is an outcome, not a process. Diversity is the result of having an inclusive, equitable, and just organization. It's the process that requires organizations to look at those 3 elements of inclusivity. Who's invited to the table? Do they know they're invited to the table? Is it equitable? Once they're at the table, are they having the same quality of experience at the table? Or are there groups that are marginalized and or forced to code switch to fit in? And then, is it just? I mean, are there barriers to getting to the table? Cost, access, time? I mean, those are all things that I've had to endure to be here today. And so it's been challenging, but I'm so glad for this opportunity and grateful to be here amongst this panel, just sharing these stories. And I'm sure that each and every one of the panelists with me has their own story, because I look up to these people because they've already accomplished what I set out to achieve.
Wow. Thank you. Code switching, when you first mentioned it, I thought, yeah, that is an incredible burden. It's as if you've got a drag on your capabilities because you have that much more to do. And I want to hear from someone maybe who's worked at a larger organization, Denise or Ezra. What's it been like for you?
So I'm Denise Woodard. I'm the founder and CEO of Partake Foods. But prior to starting Partake, I spent about 8 years at Coca-Cola, most recently in their Venturing and Emerging Brands group, where very similarly to Austin's story, it was a story of always being the only. And at the time, we had a leader, an African-American male, in Scott Uzel, who's a fantastic leader, but among the ranks of the employees, I think I was the only one. If not, I was one of less than I could count on one hand. And very similarly, just always trying to squeeze yourself into a box to fit in, trying to overperform so that people will pay attention and give you recognition. And it's exhausting. And when I look at my experience there, as I looked for mentors and advocates, there just wasn't anyone who had lived the same experiences as me, who looked like me, who could relate to me on a truly personal level. And it was frustrating and exhausting. And as I looked to start my own company, it was one of the things that I really have made an effort to create an inclusive, diverse environment, whether that's through race and gender and socioeconomic background. And I just think having lots of different voices at the table just makes us a stronger organization. And so very similarly, it was just one of those things that was exhausting to the point where you just didn't want to be there anymore, because while the talk was talked. I don't think the walk was often walked. And, I look at examples like Coca-Cola had the 2020 vision with the 5x20 initiative, where they actually put some quantifiable measures to help 5 million women by 2020. And through advocacy and education and financial resources, they were able to achieve that. And so I think there's just a larger onus on companies to put some quantifiable measures in place to help support the diverse talent that exists there.
Would you say that the entrepreneurial experience has been better or worse with regard to feeling that there's difference and structural racism in place?
Unfortunately, a lot of more of the same, of being the only. So I'm so honored to be on this panel with the rest of the folks here. But, similarly, particularly like as we were raising money, as we were going out and looking even for our earliest stages of funding, none of the investors looked like me. None of the investors had lived the same experiences as me. And so it was this idea of like, put my game face on and go in and lead with the numbers and don't be your real self, and it felt very uncomfortable and oftentimes phony. Thankfully, we, ended up with a group of investors that I couldn't have asked for better partners. But going out over and over again, I think to raise our seed round, we had nearly 90 no's that we got. And I don't want to attribute all of that to race or gender, but I would think that a lot of it is the fact that a lot of the investors we were pitching didn't understand my experiences as a woman of color. And so, unfortunately, the experience hasn't been it's different. Like, as there's been this new awakening and light brought into the systemic racism that exists in our country, it's been very bittersweet. Like, we've been having a ton of inbound from a business perspective and ton of like features and press, but it's sad to see that there's only a very small handful of Black-owned scaled food and beverage businesses across the country. So while I'm thankful that we've gotten this light shown on us, I'm sad and angered that it's the same few companies getting the light spotlight, because there's so many other factors that exist that make it hard and nearly impossible for entrepreneurs of color to succeed and thrive in the environment, whether it's funding, whether it's support from retailers, there's just so many other issues that exist that make it so hard for entrepreneurs of color to get their business to a scalable point.
You said you're getting a lot of attention right now. Do you think it'll last?
I hope it'll last, and I hope that it just kind of goes back to those quantifiable measures. I think, the social media mentions are great, but are you putting some sort of real metrics behind the change that you're going to affect as an organization, whether you're an investor, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a retailer? So I hope that it does.
So I want to turn to Jamari and ask a little bit about what your experience has been like as an entrepreneur. Has it followed what you've heard Denise say? Unmute, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Hella Cocktail Company. To answer your question, yes, I echo what Austin and Denise said completely. It's been a difficult journey. I actually helped start Hella as a result of being tired of corporate America as well, almost a decade ago. And I tried to basically flip the ecosystem that I thought I could on its head by, starting at the bottom and becoming, turning to the top. But actually what you kind of find out is that you're still in the same ecosystem, right? And so the levers that are being controlled, from access to capital to distribution to on shelf to coverage of media, is actually not controlled by you, no matter where you sit in the system, unless you have the Ubers or something that's at some light speed of growth. You are another cog in the wheel, to speak, and you have to try to earn your keep, except the access points are just not there. And so I think in trying to uncover and navigate the system, to Austin's point, you code switch. To Denise's point, you put your mask on and you try to show up with your best face every day and try to figure it out, only to be over and over and over told that it's not good enough, right? And it's exhausting because you look in the mirror and you know that you're good enough. You know that you should be in a certain spot in all the different segments of the business. And it's unfortunate that you don't have that control or even access to the control. And I think even though it's taking a long time to get to this moment, and hopefully this is not a moment, hopefully this sticks. We're happy to be on this panel and to open the dialogue, because the first thing that we need everyone to do is to acknowledge that there has been trauma, right? We talk about, in business lingo, we talk about compounding interest. We talk about time value of money. We know that those things are the epicenter of value, right? In terms of dollars and cents. And you could see that how time over hundreds of years is impossible to catch up, right? And so we need to dismantle and redesign those systems in a place that makes it more equitable. And that's equity in terms of inclusion of people. That's also, inclusion of dollars and the narrative, the actual narrative of who's in control of the stories that are told. Because as we know, as marketers of sort, TV and radio of yesteryear were the things that controlled how you viewed and perceived the world. And I think, controlling the narrative and telling a new narrative, an updated narrative, a true narrative is where we need to start. And that will trickle down all the way throughout the system. So that's where I'm at right now.
What would you say has been you talked about nodes of access. What are the most difficult ones that I mean, can you even compare them, or what comes to mind first?
For me, what comes to mind is network, right? Is the people. It's almost like you need what doesn't exist in the Black community, unfortunately, and for all the reasons we're discussing, is there's no roadmap. We're all figuring it out in a silo, and it's because there's no people to talk to that have done this at that level, that are not the same, that are not the one person that we all know, right? We all have the same two mentors that have been in the business for 20 years. But the lack of diversity inside the workplace, from the CPGs to the entrepreneurs that have done this over and over, is step one. It's access to people who have done this, which is what we all aspire to do, right? We don't want to waste 6 months or a year trying to figure out something that we could learn in a day. And so that lack of access is step one, because we're talking about time, right? And then step two, obviously, is lack of capital. And when you're a small business and when you're starting out, you can't even get a bank loan for 2 years, right? Right? We know that as a fact. And so how do we access credit or debt or equity? I mean, again, this is a people issue, right? There's no networks to understand. And Denise put it so articulately. No one's lived our lives. No one's have felt our experiences and come through the journey that we're on. So how could you possibly relate and believe that I have the ability to do what you think you want your dollars to do, right? And I think those are the two fundamental building blocks that need to have some change.
So, Ezra, you've been in the business for a little longer than the other folks who are on the panel. Have you sensed change over the years, and how has it been for you?
Change is relative, right? What I would say is I have seen it from a few different perspectives, from a large company perspective and from a small company perspective, where, when I first entered into consumer marketing and packaged goods, there was, African Americans and the Black culture was one that was looked at as saying, this is a key minority cohort. We have to make sure we're marketing toward them. And then what has very interestingly changed, I'm going to be very clear here, because this may spark or be taken the wrong way, could be dangerous. But in the switch of that, it seems like African Americans have stopped being focused on. And, and now a lot of what you hear of is Hispanic, because of the growth of that particular demographic and spending power. And so it seems like, and this is not, from business I'm on and the companies that I work with, That's all the focus there. It's more than one, there's more than enough room for everybody at the table, but it seems like from an African-American perspective, like that whole focus from a lot of companies I talk to in very diverse industries, from entertainment to food to all of that, had stopped and is focused on what is the new shiny thing that we now have to focus on. And this latest round of unrest has really brought, wow, we're the African American issue that they were initially thinking about, never really tried to solve, is still there. And so I think what it comes into from a majority standpoint is that you have to see an issue through. You can't chase the shiny penny. You can't chase economic opportunities. You have to see this thing through from the beginning to the end, because if you don't, what you're going to happen is you're going to leave a lot of promises unfulfilled. And you wonder why there's still unrest, there's still dissatisfaction. And those are the things that, that I think you're still seeing today. As far as me personally, in my own personal career, and I will, I'll be brief, but I will definitely, use a personal example that highlights a lot of things Denise, Austin, Jamari have said. When I started my career in CPG, I struggled. You start talking about code switching. I didn't understand what it meant. I came from a different background. I was in, a small company. I get thrust into at the time, a Fortune 100 company. And I didn't understand, what the code was. And I struggled for 2 years until my manager, now dear friend and mentor, who happened to be an African-American lady, told me what it meant. She said, when they say this, here's what it means. When you do this, here's how it's perceived. So she broke down the code for me, right? And then lo and behold, I start performing. Everybody's like, oh, you're a miracle worker. That's what they're telling her. Oh, you made a great comeback. I didn't understand the game. Somebody had to explain it to me. And so even with that, had accolades and those type of things, when it came to promote, with people who know brand management, particularly these large companies, they say you are a made person once you make brand manager. You got to get that stripe. As it comes time to get the brand manager stripe, I didn't get it, right? And I got moved over to sales, had a great, career in sales, but it was specifically told to me, sir, your career in brand management is over here. You're not getting back. And, I would look, and if it was just me, I would say, fine. But if I start looking around the company at African-American males, even some that have made brand manager, there was definitely a glass ceiling. And if you look at, where these individuals come from, it's a who's who of top MBA programs. You have Duke, you have Michigan, you have Indiana, you have Stanford. And you look around the company, none of the African-Americans have had, particularly males, made any kind of significant progress into C-suite potential. They're either managed out, they got tired of looking for things, tired of doing the code switching, as Austin said, and Jamari said, I'm going to go and do it someplace else. And so you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about things that are happening now. While this may come out of left field for a lot of people, this is a fight that African Americans have been fighting for a long time. And, from my personal thing, I've sat in a lot of these meetings and saying like, wow, they seem like they have just kind of skipped over the issues that happen in our community, because they feel like a lot of things that are happening right now, whether it's a PR program or investing in these things and a lot of things that are splashy, that, okay, we've gotten that. Let's really focus our dollars here on growing something else. And again, I don't think the one or the other mentality really is going to work, because the world is too diverse today.
Ezra, thank you for sharing that. I think this idea of learning to play the game versus changing the game is really one of these core issues that we have to talk through. The idea is, do we want to create a system, and this is my next question I'll throw out to everyone, where we want Black employees, we want Black entrepreneurs to play the game better? Or does the game need to change? I mean, where should food and beverage as an industry need to go to create an equal playing field? And I'll leave it to whoever wants to unmute themselves to take that.
I'm happy to. I think that it's all about equity and reflection, right, of community and of what you, as a product or service-oriented business, deliver. What do you offer, and who do you target, and who do you talk to, and who's your consumer base? And I think, you know, being equitable in that representation is, I think, the baseline of what people have always been asking for, right? I think that when you think about the future of this country, you know, people of color will represent the majority in the next 20, 30 years. And so does your business want to be on the right side of that moment and that time when it comes, and start that journey now? You know, the Black dollar is significant in the economy. And I think that at this moment, it's not respected, right? It's not, the values that we bring to the table are not respected, from inclusion of people to the reflection of the products and services in the marketplace, all the way down to it, or up to the dollars that are allocated to supporting and starting all those initiatives across all industries, right? We're talking about food and beverage, but we know this crosses over into so many industries. And I think the only way to really do it, and we've all alluded to it, is by keeping each other accountable, right? The organizations that we're going to represent, partake in, and drive up in terms of value, we need to have accountability measures in place across the board. And there's no reason not to have it, right? We deliver on door-over-door metrics. We deliver on, you know, you guys know the drill, right? And so there's no reason not to reflect our communities and inclusion and diversity in a very specific and accountable way. There's no reason for it not to happen.
The other thing I think is building on relationships. You know, particularly when you get larger companies have more sophisticated HR, and they do a lot of, you know, going to the right places and things like that. But for smaller companies, particularly food and beverage, and that's where a lot of the growth is happening, you have to get outside of your comfort zone. You have to make an effort to go out there. If you don't already have a network that's diverse, of hiring pipeline, how do you build it? You know, go out there, take the active, there's organizations out there, but you will have to do the work to make sure that your talent that you bring in is diverse and you're offering seats at the table.
So one thing that I think is interesting is Jamari is talking about really very quick change with regard to putting in requirements, right? Putting in metrics that people need to follow. Ezra is almost talking about building a cohort, which is a slightly longer curve, but they're both incredibly important. Would you say that's right? And if not, please, you know, feel free.
I think it's absolutely right. I think what Joe Marie and Ezra are saying is critical to actually seeing progress. From my perspective, as a supplier, you know, I face with these inequities that Ezra is talking about relationships and works, and also systemic issues that exist in the larger organization. And I'll give you an example. You know, we're building a new business. My business, you know, supplies hemp and cannabis ingredients. And every time we call on brands or brand managers, the first question that we're hit with is, are you already on our approved vendor list? That's the first question. And my first response is, well, how how am I going to be on this list, or how is this list created? I just built this company, and technically the ingredients that we provide are still federally, in question. So what did we have to do to overcome a lot of those barriers? We had to work 2 times as hard, 3 times as hard. We had to get all the certifications, GMP certification, organic certification. We had to build, the quality programs to, provide and show our credibility. We had to invest time, money, energy into showing that we need to be on this list. Because the fact of the matter is, as Ezra was speaking to, these lists were kind of built or developed out of existing networks, or what many people call the kind of old boys club, or what you hear when you go call on these companies is that, hey, we have a vendor, he's an old friend, he's an old frat buddy. The brand manager is essentially making sure that his friend or someone in his network is getting the business. But like Joe Marie was saying, that's the systemic issue, is that you have these existing networks that need to be upended. We need to invest in Black businesses. You need to spend your corporate dollars with Black suppliers. Those of us that are kind of behind the scenes making it happen. And so I say from a systemic perspective, it's like, know your supply chain. Identify diverse suppliers that exist in your supply chain, and you spend with those suppliers. Figure out the diversity category information and break down each supplier dollar for dollar. This process will lead you to having a better understanding of the overall diversity in your supplier program. Because remember, diversity is an outcome, not a process. So you actually got to take the time to incorporate inclusion and equity in your supplier onboarding process. Suppliers, but it's the second or third tier suppliers. So again, diversity being an outcome, not a process. If you want a majority woman-owned, supplier from Kentucky, be sure to have the proper reporting system in place to find that business in the supplier database. The system should not be based on a spreadsheet. It has to be more comprehensive. It has to Denise's point, have the metrics that you can track and find and navigate better. As tracking these metrics become more complicated and the expectations are higher on developing a robust supplier database, invest in vendor management software, or even outsource supplier management teams that can make it more manageable for your to meet your supplier diversity goals. And even better, it'd be awesome if that vendor management software was developed by a Black entrepreneur, right? And then you're ultimately investing in the community at every step of the way in the process.
Austin, thank you.
I'd love to jump in if I can.
Sure. I just want to remind
Okay.
you all that the session ends in 5 minutes. And we have a lot more work to do. So, Shamari, I just want you to go, and I want everyone to understand this is not the end of any conversation. In fact, at BevNet and at NOSH, it is the beginning. So please go, and I apologize for interrupting.
No, I'm going to be brief, and then I definitely want to throw the mic. Here's the deal. The lens that we look through is what's important, right? If you value the Black dollar and the people of color's dollar and community, then treat it like part of a business. It's an investment, right? Like we forecast, we forecast over time, we change the rates, and then we, see what happens, we see what fits, and then we reinvest and we restructure and we change and we navigate, right? And that's the way we all put on that business hat and say, how are we going to look at this product, this service, this store, this widget, right? And so I'm saying, if you look through the lens of the Black community as a whole, the entire ecosystem, supply chain, entrepreneurship, product development, et cetera, through the lens of business, it becomes really simple and easy to see how you put metrics towards these things that you're trying to achieve, right? It no longer becomes this abstract, well, how do I access? We know how to access the special valve that allows you to put, this water in this cap, right? We know how to find that if we really want to. So there's no reason to not figure out and redesign a structure and a place that includes and allows for us to forecast over time, implement structures and people and processes that make sense and allow for inclusion. And the one thing that I want to say is that it's an outcome, but the process is what matters, right? The journey of going through it over and over and over and keeping it on reinvestment and kind of revitalizing and that's what makes it go, right? It's not a one-time thing. It's not a moment in time. It's the process, just like every other part of business is, right? We look at it, we turn it over, we flip it, we bounce it, we reframe it, and then we come back to it and reinvest when it works. And that's what I implore us all to do in the food and beverage community.
Are we saying that much like a B Corp, it is part of our bottom line should be diversity, should be equal access, should be serving the community in a broad sense and not just a profit sense?
There's going to be different thoughts, right? You can say, you can treat it like B Corp, but the real question will become why? Why would you have to do that, right? Why would you have to implement that? Now, if you need to baseline it, and that's part of, you figured out, you've looked at your company and said, you know what, we don't do this well. We need to have some minimum standards. Hey, kudos. But the other side of the coin would say, why in the hell do you actually need that? Just go do it. You know what you need to do, right? So make it part of your culture. And if the top doesn't make it part of your culture, it's not going to happen, right? And so it's up to you to figure it out, but it needs to be done.
Denise, I want to throw the last word to you.
I would say, anchoring on what Jomari just said in terms of things coming from the top, I also think it needs to come from the big organizations. Like, as I look to build out my organization, I want to have diverse talent, but I also need, from a business perspective, to have people who come and had certain experiences, whether it's working at a fast growth CPG company, whether it's working in big CPG. You know what? Those places don't have a lot of Black people, which makes it really hard to build a diverse team as a small business in the natural and organic space. So I think there's some onus on large CPG companies to also take some of this load on their shoulders as well. And I'll also say, like, it's not all negative. Like, I've had positive experiences working with several large retailers in their supplier diversity programs. And I know that, in my experience at Coke, there were programs that were being built. So I would just say, like, keep doing the work every single day. You have to continue to show up. It's not oh, well, this is a cool hashtag right now, or, oh, this will be good for our numbers this year. Like, it's something that has to be ingrained into the culture, into the business, into the metrics every single day to make a real change.
You have to live your intent every day. And I wish we had more time. I thank you all so much. We're going to continue. We're going to get to the questions that came up and we're going to answer them. And I just want to say, we've all got a long way to go, but thank you for helping us at least start mapping. So,
thank you for the invite.